All right, let's dive right in. We're about to pull back the curtain on the secret that lets some of the best companies out there deliver amazing quality time and time again. It's not magic, and today we're going to break down the blueprint. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's that coffee shop that nails your latte every single morning. Or that piece of tech that just works flawlessly right out of the box. It feels like a happy accident, but I promise you it's anything but.
You see, on one hand, you've got the hit or miss experience. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's a disaster. It's frustrating. But on the other side, you have reliable excellence. That's the good stuff. That's what builds trust and makes you a customer for life. So, how do companies get from that chaotic side to the consistent one?
Well, the answer, in one word, is a system. A deliberate, carefully designed, and super disciplined approach to getting things right every single time. It is the literal blueprint for being excellent.
And that system has a name. It's called a quality management system, or QMS for short. Now, the easiest way to think about a QMS is like the operating system for a company's quality. It's the rulebook they write for themselves to make sure they're not only delivering what the customer wants, but are also constantly finding ways to get even better.
So, what makes a system like this actually work? Well, it turns out that most of them, including the big one, the international standard called ISO 9001, are all built on 7 core ideas. Think of these as the fundamental rules of the road for quality. Yep, just 7. And what's so cool is that once you know what they are, you'll start seeing them everywhere. So let's run through them real quick. Okay, number 1, and this is the big one, customer focus. The whole point, the beginning and the end of all of this, is to understand what your customers need and then deliver on it consistently. If you don't get this right, honestly, nothing else really matters. Second up is leadership. See, quality isn't just one department's job. It has to be a company-wide mission, and it's up to the leaders to set that direction and get absolutely everyone on the same page, pulling in the same direction. Which brings us to number 3, engagement of people. You just can't command quality from the top down. It doesn't work. It takes a team of people at every level who feel empowered, who are competent, and who are actually motivated to contribute.
Now, number 4, the process approach is a total game changer. Instead of just looking at individual tasks, this is about seeing the whole operation as a web of interconnected processes. When you understand how A affects B, which affects C, you can manage the entire system way more effectively.
Number 5 is improvement. And this is key. It's not a project that you do once and then you're done. A great QMS makes getting better a permanent, ongoing goal. You're always on the lookout for ways to improve, even just a little bit, every day. Coming in at number 6 is evidence-based decision-making. Gut feelings can be useful, but data is so much better. The best decisions are based on analyzing real information, not just on what somebody thinks is the right move. And last but not least, number 7, relationship management. Look, no company is an island. You have to manage your relationships with key partners, especially your suppliers. Because let's face it, their quality has a direct impact on your quality. It's all connected. Okay, so those are the 7 guiding principles. Now, let's get a little more practical. What are the actual parts, the nuts and bolts that make this whole quality machine actually run? Everything has to start with a solid foundation. And in a QMS, that's the quality policy. Think of it as the company's public promise, their big mission statement for quality. And from that promise, they set specific, measurable goals called quality objectives. These are the actual targets they're aiming for. Next, you build the structure on top of that foundation. This is where you map out all your important processes, you figure out exactly who is responsible for what, and this is huge. You start thinking about what could go wrong, identifying risks before they turn into actual problems. Then, of course, you need the engine. This is the doing part. It's the resources, the people, the tools, the technology, and all the day-to-day operational stuff for design, for purchasing, for production. This is where the work really happens. And finally, you can't run a machine without a dashboard, right? This is how the company keeps an eye on its performance, using things like internal audits or customer feedback. And when something does go off track, the dashboard is what signals that it's time to dig in, find the root cause, and fix it so it never, ever happens again. So, this all sounds pretty good on paper, but you might be wondering, how does a company actually build one of these things? Well, it's definitely not something you can just flip a switch on overnight. It's a very structured journey. And that journey usually follows a pretty logical roadmap.
As you can see, it absolutely has to start with commitment from the very top. Then you figure out where you are right now with a gap analysis. That tells you what you need to do to define your scope and map out your processes. After that, you can assess your risks and finally create the documents that tie it all together into a working system.
And it's important to remember this isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. While a standard like ISO 9001 is a fantastic framework for almost any business, industries where failure is just not an option, we're talking automotive, aerospace, medical devices, they've all developed their own, even tougher versions of these rules. The principles are the same, but the stakes are higher. Which brings us to what might be the single most important idea of all. A QMS isn't just a pile of documents you stick on a shelf. It's not a project that has a finish line. When a QMS is really, truly working, it kind of disappears into the background and becomes something way more powerful. It becomes the company culture. This quote just says it all perfectly. An effective quality management system is what provides the framework to build good habits. And over time, those habits create a culture where doing things the right way is just the default. It's not something you have to think about, it's just how things are done. So, the next time you have one of those great experiences, that perfect coffee, that seamless flight, just take a second, look a little deeper, and ask yourself, can you see the system working behind the scenes? Can you spot the habits that made it all possible? Because now you know what to look for.